This is a poster of Love Street by the Houston Blacklight and Poster Distribution Company, whose name you can see in the lower left-hand corner here. The company's offices were actually on the same street, just further down across the street from where Love Street was. And this is Commerce Avenue in downtown Houston. Love Street itself was this building here, specifically on the third floor of the building. The building in front seems to have been a sister building to Love Street when it was open. There was a head shop there called the Mind Mart, a speakeasy-themed club called Warehouse Number 1, and Mesmeric Revelation, although I don't remember what that was. There was a book that went over these shops, although I can't remember its exact title. I think it was a book just called Buffalo Bayou, about the whole history of the bayou. Although when I went to the library today to look for it, they were closed. This whole area itself is called Allen's Landing, and it's right on the banks of the bayou, the Buffalo Bayou, which runs throughout all of Houston. And the area is named after the Allen brothers, who founded Houston around the area. So this spot is sometimes called the Plymouth Rock of Houston. Many people are unaware of this, but Houston was actually the very first capital of Texas, not Austin. Originally, the building in front of Love Street existed by itself, but before it was built, there existed another building before it, which burned to the ground. These were owned by a businessman named William Davis Cleveland, and he ran his wholesale house here on Allen's Landing. Cleveland's first building was erected in 1880, but burned to the ground in 1893, so he then constructed this new one here. Then in 1894, W.D. Cleveland & Co. started manufacturing coffee. W.D. Cleveland bought the International Coffee Company in Galveston and needed another place to handle his coffee roasting and distribution business. So in 1907, Cleveland builds a 3-story building behind his main W.D. Cleveland & Co. building, having to build a new retaining wall so that both buildings sat at the same elevation. And that is this building here, and its retaining wall. Cleveland used that building to manufacture his coffee, which was sold under the Sunset Coffee label and available throughout the Southwest. After W.D. Cleveland died, his sons ran his businesses for a few decades until the Great Depression hit, and the buildings were then leased for secondary warehouse uses for the next several decades. The area around the buildings did get renovated, and it became a park when the Houston Chamber of Commerce started a committee to beautify the bayou in 1963. In 1966, construction began on Allen's Landing Park, designed by U of H architecture professor Herbert William Lindstater. In the mid-1960s, Houston artist David Addix was offered the building to use as an art studio, but he first declined. But then when Addix went to San Francisco in the early summer of 1967, he became obsessed by the liquid light shows he saw at concerts he attended there, and tried to recreate one when he came back. When he figured his light show situation out, he had a change of heart and saw the former Sunset Coffee Building's potential as a psychedelic rock club where he could showcase his light show. Addix even went so far as to say that he had an epiphany when he saw the building again and likened it to a spiritual experience, being in a state of satori. Love Street officially opened on June 3, 1967, with 2 of Houston's bands headlining, the Red Crayola and the Lost and Found. Both bands were on Houston's psychedelic rock record label, International Artists, run by Kenny Rogers' brother, Leland. The label had such bands on its roster as the 13 Floor Elevators, the Golden Dawn, and Bubble Puppy, among others. After paying a $2 entry fee and walking up 3 flights of stairs, you could enter the club and lie back in the Zonk Out area, where a series of connected foam mattresses resided. Concert goers could experience the music, light show, and dancers as they went and zonked out on the provided cushions. Addix eventually sold Love Street in later 1967 to Cliff Carlin, who managed it with his son. Love Street was active for 3 years, with plans to even expand the venue into other cities, including locations in Corpus Christi and San Antonio. But in 1970, Love Street was closed for good, when Cliff Carlin decided to put all his focus and effort into international artists then instead. Carlin's son was a U of H architecture student, who brought a lot of U of H art and architecture kids to the area, and the location served as a hotspot for hippies, artists, and counterculture types. Interestingly enough, Love Street was right across the bayou from the Houston Police Department headquarters and jail, which you can see in the poster. Needless to say, lots of dope smoking and dropping acid was going on the property. In 1969, while Love Street was still active, it briefly appeared in one scene in Robert Altman's Brewster McCloud, which features many other Houston landmarks as well. After Cliff Carlin gave up plans to keep running Love Street, the building was sold to Herbert Lindstater's colleague at the U of H College of Architecture, Burnett Keeland. Keeland used the building in front of Love Street as an art gallery, but it closed after a period of a few months. The old Cleveland building in front of Love Street was then sadly demolished in 1971, with plans to turn the plot into an upscale retail area, but that never came to fruition. Somewhere towards the end of its life, or perhaps after it closed, Love Street, which was formerly white, was given a new paint job, with striking psychedelic geometric patterns and loud primary colors decorating its walls. On the W.D. Cleveland & Co. building, there's a sign that says Allen's Landing Excursion Boat Ride in Seaport of Houston with a hand. And also there's a sign on Love Street, the Rio Posada restaurant, with a small text saying club underneath. I believe this was a Mexican restaurant, but I'm not sure on what floor it was on. But in the years after Love Street closed, the Sunset Coffee building sat there mostly abandoned, now alone without its sister W.D. Cleveland building in front. The building weathered and turned green over the decades, until the Buffalo Bayou Partnership made plans to renovate the area and restore the building to its former glory.